Today's edition of 5-Minute History will focus on the history of Jerusalem's strangest crusade, a crusade led by the people rather than a military or kingdom. Unlike many battles during this time, the People's or Popular Crusade was severely underarmed and undertrained. However, this issued no concern for its participants. The People's Crusade first began in 1095 with the head of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Urban II, promoting a speech calling upon Christian warriors to go to Jerusalem and free it from Muslim rule. Pope Urban II, most likely expecting a highly organized campaign, after all, he was the Pope of the Roman Empire. You can't expect much more military prowess than that. However, what he received was far different than this. Thanks to the efforts of Peter the Hermit, a monk with high social standing amongst the Christians, news of the crusade began to spread, and not only to readily available combatants, but Christians of all ages and genders as well. Peter was so convincing, in fact, that he convinced many of these Christians, despite their lack of training and funds, to leave on the spot with him right then and there, believing that it was a mission from God and that he would provide for their needs. However, to say that the entirety of the crusade consisted of only untrained peasants is simply not true, as many noblemen and trained knights were amongst their ranks. Albeit only a faction of the crusade's force, they were still able to instill some sense of discipline into the ranks. In March of 1096, the Crusades, made mostly up of pilgrims, began their trek from Europe towards Jerusalem, beginning their journey through France and Germany. The first to leave from France was Walter Sanzavor, who was in command of 8 knights and a large company of infantry, proceeding to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. The next to make the trek was Peter the Hermit, along with his crusaders. However, being much less disciplined than the pilgrims, they faced much greater trouble on their way, finding trouble in the Balkans, first in Hungary, where his force pillaged, killing many Hungarians, and later Belgrade, where many of his soldiers would fall. Coinciding with this event, the Crusades made their eventual arrival to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, despite losing many of their men and resources. Upon their arrival, the speech from Pope Urban began to fester, which painted the Muslims of Jerusalem as subhumans and, most importantly, enemies of the Christian Crusaders, of which Peter's speeches were far worse. However, it was not only the Muslims that were painted this way, but Jews too, with the events of 1096 later being named as the First Holocaust. It is during this time that mass pogroms are seen across Europe, killing an estimated 4,000 to 10,000 Jews during the year, equivalent to 1/4 the Jewish population in Europe during this time. However, by the time Peter arrived in Constantinople, Walter and his knights had already been waiting for weeks, and unrest had begun to set in. It is during this time that the Byzantine Emperor Alexius suggests that the group should wait for the bulk of the crusades that had been amassing within Europe. This idea did not go over well with the underfed and underdisciplined troops of Peter. Only a week later, the Crusaders crossed from Bosporus into Asia Minor. Now, in absolute enemy territory, the Crusaders began to see the truth of where they stood, under-equipped and under-armed, making the decision to return to Constantinople. The leaders asked Alexius for help. It is during this time that the Crusade split, forming one group of mainly Germans and some Italians, and a separate French side, which found resources raiding a suburb. However, once the Germanic side found out about this news, they attempted the same with a much different result. After the French raid, the Turkish forces expected another raid, and shortly after, ambushed the Germans after their arrival. The Germans made their last stand within Zergderon for 8 days, ultimately being defeated. It is here that Turkish forces either killed the Crusaders or forced them to convert to Islam, later to be sold into slavery. Following soon after, the Turks sent a fake message to the French forces, citing the riches in which the Germans have found. Despite being warned, the French Crusaders made the trek, ultimately leading up to the same fate as the Germans, being slaughtered. Now known as the Battle of Scheivtod, this would mark the end of the People's Crusades. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay on the lookout for newly posted videos.